On a jagged cliff where the Atlantic wind hollowed like a wounded beast, the old Marrows Point lighthouse stood, its beams still slicing through the fog, as it had for over a century. Most maps no longer marked it, and sailors whispered stories of the place in low tones, as if naming it too loudly might stir something long buried. The keeper of the lighthouse, a man named Elias Thorne, arrived with little fanfare. He was a former naval officer, quite disciplined, and a man who had seen enough air to believe no ghost could frighten him. When the Maritime Authority offered the loan post, he had accepted without hesitation. He needed solitude, silence, the kind that only the sea could offer. But the sea offered more than silence. The first days passed without incident. Elias kept logs, checked the lamp, wound the mechanism. Every evening, the light circled across the grey water like a heartbeat, steady and strong. At night, the wind scratched at the window, and girls screamed in the distance. But that was to be expected. It was on the fifth night that something changed. As Elias sat at his desk writing in the logbook, he heard footsteps on the spiral staircase that wound up to the light. Heavy, slow, not the kind a bird or animal might make. He stood quickly, calling out, "Who's there?" No answer. He waited, but the footsteps stopped. When he opened the iron hatch and climbed up to the lamp room, it was empty. The lens rotated silently, casting its glow out into the mist. Elias checked the stairs, the landing, even outside the lighthouse base. Nothing, no footprint, no sign of a visitor. He chalked it up to his imagination. Maybe the echo of the wind. But the sound returned the next night, and the night after that. Sometime it was footsteps, other time it was a soft knock against the metal door downstairs. Always slow, always deliberate. When Elias opened the door, the only thing waiting for him was fog, the kind that hung thick as smoke and muffled the world into the breathless hush. By the end of the second week, Elias began noticing the door to the lamp room swing open by itself. Once, he returned from a supply run to find all the logs torn from the books and scattered across the floor, ink smeared like blood. He cleaned it all in silence, jaw tight, refusing to believe in ghosts. But even disbelief has its limits. On the 21st night, the light failed. Elias had been inspecting the generator downstairs when the beam above sputtered and died. He ran up, slipping on the narrow steps, and found the glass cracked from inside. The bulb, a reinforced halogen meant to withstand storm winds, had exploded. Shards lay around the floor, like teeth. In the center of the room was a single handprint, dark and wet, smeared across the glass casing. A human handprint, but no longer had entered or exited the tower. He stood there for minutes, unmoving, listening. The air felt different, not colder, but heavier, like something watched him. When he began to descend, he heard it again, the footsteps. But this time, they are coming up the stairs. Elias Thrawn stood frozen, staring down the iron spiral staircase that twisted into the darkness below. The footsteps echoed upward, slow and wet, like the dragging of something heavy. They were too deliberate to be the wind, too real to be his imagination. His breath caught. His military instinct told him to descend, confront it. But something deeper, older, primal, told him to stay still. The noise stopped. He waited, clutching the iron railing. Silence. No movement. Just the faint creaking of the tower against the wind and the steady crash of waves far below. Then a voice, low, raspy, impossible. You shouldn't be here. Elias turned sharply. The room was empty. He spun in a full circle, checking behind the broken lens, the maintenance slips, even the narrow service panel, but nothing. The voice had not come from below. It had come from beside him. That night, he didn't sleep. The following day, Elias ventured down to the shore at low tide. Just beyond the rocks, half buried in a sand, he saw the skeletal remains of what looked like a long boat, rotted wood, black with algae. Something about it tugged at his memory. He had seen boats like that in history books, smuggling vessels, maybe even older. When he reached, he found a rusted iron shackle inside, still locked shut. A torn rope hung from the side, like an unspoken story. The next evening, he scanned the old keeper's quarters more carefully. Dusty cabinet, molded blanket, faded photograph of lighthouse. Keepers who looked more like ghosts than men. Behind a low panel in the wall, he discovered a ledger. No year on the cover, just the name James Oster. Elias flipped through its yellow pages, reading aloud in a whisper. August 2nd. Light failed again. Third time this week. Claimed another boat last night. That makes 7. I asked the sea for mercy, and it gave me a name. August 7th. The child cries at night. August 19. I see them now, watching from the rock. They have no eyes. The final entry was smeared with something dark. Elias wasn't sure if it was ink or blood. He closed the book and stepped back. His heartbeat pulsed in his ears. This place wasn't haunted in the way most would think. It wasn't one ghost, it wasn't one event. Something had been happening here for years. The fog returned that night, thicker than ever. It coiled around the lighthouse, swallowing the world outside. Even the beam, once restored, could barely cut through it. Elias sat at the kitchen table, every candle lit, the fireplace blazing. He didn't want shadows, not anymore. He didn't trust what might move inside them. And yet, from the corner of his eye, something did move. A figure, small, childlike. He turned sharply, but the room was empty. Only the logbook lay open. A page that he didn't written on now had 5 words in neat cursive. You are not the last. He shut the book, backed away, knocking the chair over. From the wall, the old brass barometer began to spin. Wildly, pressure dropping faster and faster. Then it stopped. A deep silence filled in the room. And in that silence, a scream. Elias dropped the candle in his hand. Darkness returned. That night, sleep did come, but it brought dreams. He dreamed of the ocean receding from the cliff, revealing bodies tangled in seaweed, mouths wide open, eyes gone. He saw himself among them, lighthouse keepers' jackets soaked in brine, hand raised as if he were calling. He woke to cold and to the realization that the light had gone out again. Elias sprang from bed, his breath forming mist in the air. The fire had gone cold. The lighthouse interior, usually warm from the generators and the lamp heat, now felt like a crypt. The kind of cold that sink into the bone, silent, watchful. He grabbed his flashlight and dashed up to the spiral staircase, boots thudding like wire drums against iron. Each step seemed longer than the last, as though the lighthouse stretched higher with every breath. When he reached the lamp room, the sight made him stumble. The bulb was intact, the lens untouched, the power supply ran perfectly, but the light refused to turn on. He checked the circuit, the fuse box, even tried the manual crank for the backup. Nothing. And then crossed the inner wall of the tower. What began to form? Slowly, letter by letter. The sea does not forget. Elias back into the corner, heart pounding. He stared at the words as they darkened, like ink soaking into the stone. And then come the knocking. Not from the bed, not from the staircase, from the inside of the walls. Knuckles rapped from behind the brickwork, moved steadily, cycling the room, as if someone or something was inside with him, behind the wall, watching, waiting. He ran down the stairs, through the narrow corridor, past the kitchen, toward the storage hatch in the basement. He didn't know why. maybe instinct, maybe madness, but something drew him there. The hatch groaned as he pulled it open. The air was thicker below, like breathing through the damp cloth. The flashlight flickered. He descended into the cellar, once used for oil and coal. Now it is filled with salt crusted debris, barrel, carrot, and old ropes. And at the far end, there is a door, one he had never seen before. It wasn't on the original blueprint, not listed in any record. The door was made of iron and wood, rotted but intact. A rusted plaque above it, and it read 1874. Late, none passed twice. Elias hesitated, but opened. Inside there is a narrow stone chamber, circular like a lighthouse above, and in the center, a well, dry, its stone blackened, its edge marked with symbol, carved deep into the rock. Symbol he didn't understand but felt wrong just looking at. He stepped closer. Then the voice returned, not a whisper at this time, not a hallucination, a choir of voice. Children, women, men, all crying, screaming, chanting. We lit the light and drawn the dark. They repeat same thing again and again. The sound rose, louder, until it filled the room, until Elias couldn't hear his own thought. And in that storm of voice, he saw them. The faces, pale, bloated, waterlogged, peering up from the well. And one of them was his own. He stumbled back, tripping over the edge of the room. The flashlight hit the ground and shattered. The chamber plunged into the black. He scrambled out, slamming the iron door shut. The chanting stopped instantly. Upstairs, the air felt different. The pressure had lifted. The fog outside thinned, revealing the moon for the first time in days. And the light was on, burning, turning, and steady. But the Elias knew better. The next morning, he packed his things, no note, no entry in the logbook. He simply walked out of the lighthouse and never returned. They say he was found weeks later, wandering the docks in a neighboring town, his mouth moving with no words. He never spoke again. The lighthouse now stands abandoned. Locals say the lighthouse still works, but no one keeps it. Ships that pass by don't dare anchor near the Maros Point. The water is still calm, still too much. Sometime on a foggy night, if the wind is just right, they say you can hear knocking from beneath the waves. And if you climb the cliffs, listen hard enough, you will hear a voice whispering, "You are not the last."